very good afternoon and welcome to the Apnu+Afc Recount Update. So glad that so many of you took some time to join us this afternoon to gather some information to make sense of what has been happening during the course of today. As you guys know, the hearing of the matter concerning the motion that was filed preventing the Chief Elections Officer from submitting his elections report yesterday was heard this afternoon at 1:30 at the Court of Appeal. You should note that the hearing of the substantive matter will be done tomorrow at 11, tomorrow Saturday at 11 before the Court of Appeal. The three justices who are going to be hearing the substantive matter are Justice Don Gregory Barnes, Justice Rishi Prasad, and High Court Judge Brassington Reynolds. Those are the three judges who are going to be hearing the matter. It's also noteworthy that there seems to be some parties who have joined the substantive matter. Those political parties are the PPPC, Change Guyana, New Movement, Citizenship Initiative, and the Liberty and Justice Party are all now joined in this substantive matter. I'm privileged to have with me this afternoon Minister of Public Security, Minister Kemraj Ramjatan, who has been going over the this case submitted by Attorney at Law Mayo Robinson on behalf of his client, Ms. Eslyn David. Minister, welcome.
Thank you very much, Sharon, and it is, of course, very important to have a little discussion with you about the case and things of that nature and all that is related to why this happened. It is fundamental that we do have such a discussion so that the broad parameters as to the purpose behind it could be understood by members of the public out there. And also we can counter some of the false propaganda, the fake news, and largely the disinformation that we are getting from the People's Progressive side and those that are associated with the People's Progressive Party. So I want to start out by saying that I was pleasantly surprised that there was a court action. And then I immediately got to know what it is all about by asking for a copy of that motion that was filed. Indeed, it was not an injunction, as was earlier related, and so that should be cleared up. However, I think it is the normal committee of the constitutional body called GCOM and the court that has seen no declaration, as it were, at this point in time, because that GCOM chairperson is a very well-known lawyer and wants to pay heed to an especially important court in Guyana, the Court of Appeal, on matters that are very fundamental to the very crux of this elections. And that is why I think she has not, as some people have been forcing her to do, why doesn't she get on with it? I noticed an international observer team also saying that, because you have not been injuncted. But there is decency and comity, and that is what it is called, comity. You respect the other. The other is now seized of the action or the motion for a determination of some very fundamental questions. And so that is why I think that the chairperson has deferred until such a ruling has been made. This court, the Court of Appeal, is the court with the exclusive jurisdiction to deal with these matters as to validity of an elections and all of that. And just peremptorily going through, meaning, you know, at a first glance, all these issues and emotion and what is being asked for, I think that people out there in Guyana should be very happy that at least this route towards knowing what should be the final outcome coming from a court of law will make it very definitive, will make it final, and it is important that we understand that. Remember, some time ago, an Order 60 was made in which, after certain numbers were being called out inside of the Hatfield Street building, people got very annoyed People invaded the building, especially the PPP. They even wanted to ransack the office of the chairperson and all of that. And a whole lot of things went on. And though that RO made certain declarations, the president, in his wisdom and wise counsel, decided that, look, let's have a recount, because too many people are disagreeing with what was being called out. And so we had a position there where a recount order, because prior to that, there was absolutely no law whatsoever, or no prescription or no regulation that demanded recounts of that nature. So the elections body made this order called 60 of 2020. And in that order, it indicated that it will go towards ensuring a credible final count by doing a number of things. One of which was not only to count Region 4 boxes, but also to count the whole country's boxes, Region 1 to 10, 2,339. In addition to that, it wanted the count to be of that quality in which you're supposed to find reconciliations with the votes as against the unused ballots, ensure that from the documentation that you're going to find in the box, whether the votes have been stamped or unstamped, ensuring that the oaths of identity of all those who voted without ID cards will be there. It is all there under a whereas clause that relates to this recount. It is clearly there, and that you had to ensure that that is what now going to give you that conclusion, credible final count. So when the recount started, a humongous amount of anomalies and irregularities and non-violation of the provisions, non-adherence to the provisions were found. And the CEO in charge of the process, administratively, had to do summaries for each one of these region 1, region 2, region 3, right up to region 10. And indeed, in his statement therein about these summaries, which he has shared after the recount was completed, I have a copy of those summaries. It is riven asunder, literally. It is painted all over these regional summaries, what I regard as an elections that could not be regarded as credible. And indeed, that was the conclusion of the Chief Elections Officer. And the Chief Elections Officer, notwithstanding those opinions in relation to each of the region, at the meeting, I understand 2 days ago or yesterday it was told now that, look, we are not going to deal with these irregularities. That is for an elections petition court. We are not going to deal with credibility. We are dealing with the recount numbers only, as per the statement I understand, and we all understand, from the chairperson. Well, that would have meant then that the CEO was supposed to now bring only the recount numbers. And of course, we know the recount numbers. It is 233, 217 for the two big parties here, our party, Apnu+Afc, and the PPP. However, in view of the process being so non-credible, we have a scenario whereby when the order indicated that these were the two processes, one, to ensure a credible final count. So the arithmetic of the count was one aspect of it, but its credibility, and that is why the description credible is there. It must have that quality before you can say that this is genuine, free, fair, and so on, and acceptable. And I was a little bothered by what was said, that we are not going to deal with credibility, and I am very happy that a citizen of the country have decided
Yep.
to ask the court here to clarify then what is it
Yep.
that the CEO must come forward with when, having already come forward with his opinion that it is not credible, you're simply asking back for the arithmetics of the thing. That is just half of it. The other half is obviously the process from which it arose. I have in a previous television interview indicated that these votes are like the fruits from a tree, and if that tree is poisoned at its root by some poison, you are going to have fruits that are poisoned. So notwithstanding you count up the fruit and you get 120,000 votes or whatever, or 20,000 fruits, they're poisoned because of the process. And that is what I feel, really took me aback and struck me when that aspect of the matter wasn't dealt with. We do have a court under our Constitution that can deal with these issues, in my opinion. And that court is the Court of Appeal, under that same Article 177, because that article indicated how a president should be declared,
Yep.
but it also, subparagraph of that, or a sub-article of that 177 indicated that you can go to the Court of Appeal for determine questions as to validity.
And that is what, in essence, Ms. Eslyn David has done through her attorney, Mayo Robertson. Their contention is that, as you said, 177 2B, which has the words more votes are cast in favor of one candidate as against the other, should be read in conjunction with the Representation of People Act Section 96, which talks about valid votes.
That's correct.
So that is their contention. What are your thoughts there?
Well, that is the other big question. Now that you have gotten the arithmetics from a process that was not credible, how do you get a genuine number as a result of what you will call credible a process? It was my opinion that because the process was wholly incredible, or not credible, that it should have been annulled. And annulled, I believe, was a power inherent in the GCOM. But they're saying that they don't have that power. It now goes to the court, a court that can talk about validity and so on. I don't specifically feel that this court too will not have that power, like what GCOM is saying. This court might very well rule that so many things happened to this elections when the recount occurred, to the extent that it should not be called, and because of the credibility issues that are so clothing almost every ballot box, or 1,000 and more.
Yeah.
You understand? And that is what I feel, because the question of credibility is the one that looms large and hovers large in this elections, based on when we now go into the box. When we were outside of the box, people are using their SOP to say Mingo got it wrong. All right, well, we go in to see whether it is right now. And when you went into all these boxes, what we saw was so much a ghost, so much a wickedness, obviously. And that is the point that we are all making here. And the thing is so rampant, as I have said, we have to ensure that some senior authority in relation to this matter makes a determination as to whether, notwithstanding those non-credible process, the votes must still be called, and then you go by elections petition and all of that. That is what the chairman had ruled. You go by elections petition. But a recount literally is like having what would normally be done in an elections petition.
Which is what the CARICOM team said, in essence, that they were not part of a recount, they were part of an election audit.
That's right. Well, that is the whole point of it, and I think that it is very useful. Though unprecedented, it is very useful for our jurisprudence. It is very useful for our authoritative legal text to state that indeed these matters were addressed, even if it's going to be 2020, June month, whatever, that they were addressed by them so that it could be, again, something that could bring finality to the process, determine the process to the status that will make everybody happy, because largely when a court rules, there is an acceptance of it. I could have foreseen a difficulty between the CEO now and the chairman of the Elections Commission.
Which is my next question, Minister. You talk about unprecedented. I know you widely read on these matters. Have you seen an instance where you have a chief elections officer who says the entire election process was neither fair nor credible, but yet looking at 177, you have the chairman who asked for a report based on who has more votes, when the chief elections officer has said the entire process was neither fair nor credible? Have you ever seen that?
I have never seen that. I remember that we had to amend that article 177. I think it was when it used to be the chairman declares the results. It never say acting on the advice only of the CEO.
And how did we get there, Minister?
And we got there because I think it was the Janet Jagan issue. 1997. I was a member of the People's Progressive Party there, and quite frankly, I had some inside knowledge as to what was happening and all of that. Of course, Janet was a presidential candidate. This is what happened. The chairman of the Elections Commission just made the declaration, did not have a duly summoned meeting of all the 6 other commissioners, nor did he get any advice from
the chief elections
the
officer.
chief elections officer. I think it was Stanley Singh at that point in time. And these players, who are big players, the 3 commissioners from the PVP, the 3 from the PNC, felt very bad about that. And even Stanley Singh, you gone and call out the numbers as if you had counted them, and you had known the process that out of which it arose. And then, and that was 1997, and then in 2000, we made an amendment to it. And the amendment now reads, I think, you make the call and declaration only upon the advice of the CEO.
Yep.
Okay?
Acting on the advice. Yep.
Acting on the advice. Acting on the advice of very, very meaningful phrases. That is meaningful, you know. The words there, it didn't put in just for sugar up the provision. And it came out and evolved out of a certain set of circumstance. That you call the elections, the results, the declaration, acting only upon the advice of the CEO. Mm-hmm. So assuming now, if we hadn't gone to court, the CEO goes and give the chief elections officer, the CEO goes and give the chairperson something that says that this is what I regard as valid votes. And she says, no, I'm not accepting that. I have asked you for the recount numbers. He will say, well, I have a duty under the section 96 to give you the valid votes. And valid votes means votes that are the process from a credible exercise, not the one that like we've seen. Oh yes, I can give you the thing, that is very simple, but I would urge that the declaration not be made on that. That is what is happening here, is playing out. Yeah. And it is a good thing that is being played out in a court, because a court will bring finality to it. Just like that no confidence motion. We went right up to the CCJ. A lot of people cuss us and say we can't do mathematics and so on. Again, they're going to cuss us here. They're going to say 233 is more than 250, 217 and whatever. But the principle is that you must not get 233 out of a process that is not credible, where thousands and thousands of the boxes obviously were tainted when the documents were not in there and so on. And what was it that the court ruled in the Holodar case when there wasn't the performance of the statutory functions, as they say, of Mr. Mingo? They went to court, Anand Nandalal and them, and they said that you got to call the thing out from each of the statement of poll, not this spreadsheet. And then the man had to go back and statement of poll, because they literally quashed what he had been announcing based on spreadsheet. They quashed it, literally. They then went on statement of polls, and then they quashed that too, because they say it's wrong numbers there. Well, if you say it's wrong numbers and you quash it there, when you're now going to call a box and the box and get all that which should make it reconcilable to bring genuineness about that box, why are you calling that box? And I think the argument being made by Mr. Mayo Robertson here is that subtract all those boxes. The thing can come up to a lot of votes, about 10,000 of them. Then also a whole set of other votes, people were there and they voted. You got to minus that, and then you got to minus the non-valid votes that would have come from the process of immigrants, but that is non-residents.
Yep.
And when you start thinking about that, these elections could be won by the Apnu+Afc.
Those persons who will have voted via certificates of employment, proofs of identity, and you can't find the very documents.
Absolutely. What do? There is going to be tremendous difficulty, though, in the sense that with a person who didn't vote with a voter ID card, how do you know whether that person had voted for Apnu or a PVP, right? And that is where we are saying that the annulment was so important. But in any event, if you have boxes there that don't have any compliance with the provisions, just like you're saying, oh, Mingo didn't comply and so on, stop that. Don't bother with that. Go it over. Well, my dear, it's the same process. I do not want to be a man from a country who's going to see this kind of thing happening, and we do not have, from our highest court here, the Court of Appeal or the Constitutional Court, just like the constitutional body is GCOM, that same provision that tells GCOM that got so much power to declare a president that you can go to the same Court of Appeal for assistance. And I think that is what is happening here. And I think it is a wonderful exercise to ensure that we know what it is that will be the final thing. And people should not be critical and saying, oh, look how they're delaying it for a couple days longer and all that trash. The court system is there for a purpose. And as I've been saying, and I've been pleading with Guyanese, I do not want, olden English times, how they used to settle these issues is they go in the hills and they kill each other. One big massacre. And whosoever turned king, well, he turned king. We don't want that in this democracy. We want the courts, institutions where you can take your warfare at a verbal level, at a legal level, and then solve it there, and we abide by the court's decision. If you want to go, you could appeal to the CCJ, but I don't know if that jurisdiction is ousted in this case, but all of that are research to be done. But I think wheresoever you want to carry it, and let that be the final decision, just like how we live with the fact that 33 is the majority in Parliament rather than 34, and we have lived with that. But please, people out there must understand that is why we have a constitutional body, and that is why we have constitutional authorities like the court to make the determinations. And so I got on my Facebook, and I got from some people in the press, Kaicho News and so on, even big people in Kaicho News calling me, and one set of cuss down. I don't know if they don't understand the relevance and the very solid purpose behind institution. We want to be an institutional democracy. So whenever we have huge problems like these confronting us, where do you go? You act in the opinion of those PPPites on the social media, calling black people all kinds, and Sharon Das calling people dogs and so on. What is wrong with these people? Do you know how you're invoking that division again in our society? And now when you go back to the court, for the courts to bring some finality, that is the best place we can go. Do you want us to have like what we had at Bath Settlement? people with cutlasses running police away. Guyana is civilized, and the civility of it will depend on the routes we take to go towards the institutions. And the institution here that has a final bearing is our court system. And our court system will have to determine it. And I am very glad, listening to the little, it wasn't so clear on the radio, and the internet radio, but I understand that they want all submissions by tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock. And is it 11 or 10 o'clock? 11, they will hear the submissions. Each person got 30 minutes to talk. And then they will make their decision, more likely in the next day probably. They could work on Sunday. Our court system wants also to bring the matter to an end by its expeditious hearing and determination of the matter. So it is very, very fundamental, a course that is being taken to utilize the institutions of democracy for the resolution of this.
Minister, you spoke a little bit about this, but I'm hoping you can expand on it. As concerned the court case by Ms. Eslyn David through her attorney, Mr. Robertson, Maya Robertson, they are also contending that it is GCOM, again, like you said, coming through from the credibility issue of the declarations that were made initially. The president engaged in this national recount wanting a credible result. Their contention is that GCOM set the parameters of the exercise, doing all of this reconciliation of ballots destroyed, ballots spoiled, stamped, and deemed necessary their counterfoils, and the votes cast with ID cards and all of that. This scrutiny, rigorous scrutiny of the ballot boxes. And now when we come to the end, they say, well, we aren't going to entertain that to end up at a credible final count. We just wanted the tabulation aspect of it. What are your thoughts there?
Well, that is what
as to the contention.
That is what disappointed me, I must tell you. I have the greatest respect for Justice of Appeal Claudette Singh, and let me tell you, you wouldn't imagine, it is right up there. I have worked with her in the courts in so many criminal trials when I was a prosecutor for over 5 years, and also a general practitioner doing criminal work and also civil work before her. And the fact that she went back to simply talk about the arithmetics out of the order that said it was a dual purpose to get a credible final count. Credible final count means the arithmetic of it and also the process of it. That's how I interpreted it. But of course, I am happy that she too, probably realizing that this thing can bring some contention, that the Mayo instituted litigation is a good thing. Is it Davidson? David or
Yeah.
Davidson?
Eslyn David.
Eslyn David,
is the litigant.
Yeah, is a good thing. Because it helps. When the PPP bring the guy with the name, I mispronounced his name,
Yes,
Holadar.
yeah.
Holadar.
Yeah.
Holadar's matter, that was good. It brought to the bear that we can have senior officers of the elections process scrutinized by our courts. And that was wonderful. When Yulita Moore came, that was wonderful. These things must not be seen as busybodies bringing vexatious and frivolous claims. And especially from senior lawyers or lawyers that know a thing or two and wanting. But in any event, these are wonderful points to address by a court of law. And so it is my concern here that having done something that some people might disagree with her with, and I with duly respect, I don't want to, some people start cussing up the lady. That is total nonsense. And I hate when Guyanese, here it is, you have your personage in Justice Claudette Singh making a ruling, you don't like the ruling, you start cussing the lady. What crap is that? We are not going to move as a country because every time we get in the agreement, assuming the Court of Appeal rule against some of us, we going to cuss the Court of Appeal too? We have to finally get our matters settled in a dispassionate way by institutions that have the capacity and the history of working to resolve points like these, lawyers that is, and judges with experience at our Court of Appeal to settle them. And so I don't want people, now that we have gone there, some people, especially some PPPites, vex. And if you see the racist propaganda they're spewing out, they're spouting out, that is madness. That brings us back into the retrograde stage. We don't want to go there. We want to move ahead. And you know, these things have happened in so many countries. If you have ever been a student of elections or law, when an elections is held in England, a whole set of elections petition and elections applications are made to the court. I remember the big one, Al Gore, and for the Americans, the Chads weren't properly punched out and all of that. And it could have made a difference between Al Gore and Bush Jr., was it?
Yes.
Yeah, Bush Jr. And it went from there, the courts, the Florida court, to the Florida Supreme Court, to the Supreme Court of the United States of America.
Yep.
And then they dealt with it. Some people hate the decision of the Supreme Court of America. But it brought finality to the process. And though we might hate it, we have to regard it as right because it is final. We can always criticize it. Up to now, some people criticizing the CCJ decision that 34 ought to have been the number. But the CCJ has ruled that it is 33. And we will respect that and we will conduct our affairs based on that. So if there ever was going to be another no confidence motion, 33 is the number. And though we might vex or whatever, the CCJ is right because it is final. You can't go away after that. It's dead. And the reasoning of the court therein, I support, and we support it and we move on. But don't go start cussing up judges. Don't go start cussing up everybody. You can have disagreements and you defer and you can say it with all due respect, I disagree, and then you move on. That is how Guyana will prosper as a nation, when its people start being civil to the institutions that govern them and also to the other people that manage these institutions. Rather than just go and start wildly using cutlasses and police and get them running like they did at Bath Settlement. Or throwing things at buses with children inside. No, we're not going to go there. And I would want even our supporters to know that we must not go there to be lawless. This is a civil country, a democratic country, and as I said, we await now the court's ruling on the matter.
Minister, there are those who talk about the powers of GCOM, that GCOM has wide omnibus powers. They say that GCOM has, there's an imperative that GCOM has that the trust and confidence continue to be reposed in it, and it must do everything to dispel that lack of confidence. There are others who say that GCOM has panoply of powers, the plenitude of powers vested in GCOM to do almost anything relevant, fair, and necessary to bring a fair, smooth conclusion to the election so that the accurate results can be declared. And then there are those who says that GCOM does not have the power to pronounce on the legality of its own processes and systems. What are your thoughts?
How did GCOM, when the legality of what Mingo was calling out, halt the process? Because it got the plenitude and panoply of powers. GCOM has a huge set of powers in relation to the conduct of elections. And if GCOM see as a body collectively that things are going wrong in some places, GCOM can call it off. GCOM has that power. We did not know of all of these shenanigans carried out in strongholds of the PPP and all of that on the elections day by not going into the ballot box. You understand? Now you go into the ballot box and the ghosts confront you. Very mischievous ghost. What do? You have to now call it. And that is the whole point of this thing. GCOM could have called it. Of course, the chairperson taking, I think it was a 3-3, and then she had to make the decision. She said, no, she feel that it is the elections petition court. But when prior to a declaration of the results, you had done a complete recount, something that is done like in the elections petitions cases, you would be in a position to make the call. And that is what we are saying here. Having gone into the boxes, an unprecedented thing prior to a declaration, you can see, assuming, tell me something. Assuming when we had gone into the boxes in this recount, all the boxes only had the PPP votes inside, and it had none of the votes of Apnu+Afc. And the PPP votes come up to 233,000 votes, right? Would GCOM call that fair? Where the amount of votes gone? Where all the thing gone?
Elections petition.
Oh, elections petition, because only 233,000 votes they inside there. That's how you're going to call the elections? Well, we are saying that extreme example was not the case here. But you had about 1,000 boxes that had so many troublesome areas. What do you do? What do you do? We feel that it is important that you have to make the call, and GCOM can make the call. Because assuming the boxes have nothing inside, what are we going to do? Oh God, is what happened here. We got caught out this election. So you got power to annul. If you could order a recount by annulling what an RO was saying, you got powers to annul the whole blasted thing. And that is what we are saying, and that is what we were a little disappointed with, but that is what we have now gone to the courts, for the courts to make a declaration as to whether it was credible or not, based on all these substantial credibility issues. I am certain that the court will see the summaries from the CEO. They will also see, I think, also things like from the CARICOM report. I understand that Ralph Ramkaran is going to tender that as a document. We're going to see, and let everything be there, right? But what is important, of primary importance, everything is secondary and tertiary, everything else, of primary importance is the CEO's advice. And if the CEO has taken this position, and then you have to make a call. I don't know. It is going to be a very difficult decision for the court, but the courts are there to make decisions out of difficult questions of law and difficult questions of facts and all of that. They could do that. And I believe that that is what they ought to do. I hope that they too don't try to say they don't have no jurisdiction to do that. It is a GCOM call. Because if it goes back to GCOM and they said they don't have any jurisdiction, you might very well find that what the GCOM chair has asked for will have to be gotten, and that you can have a serious, well, some people will regard it as serious. So it is important. It is important that the whole body of law in relation to elections in Guyana seem to be under determination in these. Is how much days? 107 days since the elections? 110, no? Long time.
Minister, on that note, prior to May 6th, the start of the national recount, the foreign missions here, the local observers, international observers were very vocal, but it seems as though when the ballot boxes were opened and the irregularities started to pour out, they've gone very silent. What are your thoughts there?
Well, as I have said in another place, they are being very diplomatic about their conduct now, realizing that people have criticized them in relation to what happened on that day when the invasion and all of that occurred, and what some commissioner talk about, let's say the Canadian High Commission. So I rather feel that they believe now silence is golden, and let, as the president say, let the people who are in charge, GCOM, and now GCOM in association with the court's guidance, be the people who are going to declare. They will certainly have their views. They might not change from their views that the process was flawed by what Mingo was calling out and all of that. But they seem not to want to say anything, at least some of them. The CARICOM team has indicated that it was reasonably credible. And because it was reasonably credible, with very serious shortcomings, but it is still reasonably credible to make a declaration. Well, that is good to have from an observer team that we invited. And we will pay consideration to that. But our consideration that we really got to pay is the CEO, who under our Constitution says that his advice, and only in his advice,
acting on his advice,
the declaration or the declarer, that is the chairperson, and so on. And I don't want us to put a scenario whereby there can be conflict between the two. I could have seen a little conflict coming, and that is why I think it was good that somebody carried to court, for the court to resolve that conflict. And so let us await. I am awaiting with abated breath. Look, I've been doing that for the last 110 days, it seems.
Minister, on that note, finally, this has been called the mother of all elections. And some have said it seems as though it's going to take 9 months for us to get this baby from the electoral process. As we go through the throngs of the birth pain, what is your message to the nation, a very tense nation?
Well, before I go to that message, Sharad, 4 days ago, a whistleblower from Cambridge Analytica made a statement that the elections in Guyana, 2015 that was interfered with by Cambridge Analytica. And I don't know if Guyanese understand how these people operate. And that Donald Ramotar, president in 2015 or 2014, paid Cambridge Analytica $420,000 US to profile a huge amount of Guyanese. And they profiled them by going into their messages in the Facebook or wheresoever, Twitter, whatever. And then they could do what is called psychodemographics of each Guyanese. So they know, Don, that you and me, we vote in Apnu+Afc. They know Jagdeo and Irfan voting for PPP. But there is a sliver of votes that are called persuadables. They know where they're going to vote for this elections. And Cambridge Analytica, good enough because of the expertise they got, to ensure that people are identified, that sliver of votes, about 25, 30,000 of them. And you direct personalized ads to them to bring them back over. Okay? That is what caused Brexit vote to be lost, to be won, and Trump and so on. And even, I think in 2010, she said, Kamala used them.
Prasad Bisesa.
Right. Now, we still won the 2015 elections, but a lot of the information there and the advice that was paid for by Donald Ramotar was used by Mercury. Look, I had a small party called AFC. Me and Cathy and you and all of we. And we had our AFC chapter. Our AFC chapter used to go to them congressmen and them senator, free of cost, and tell them what is happening in Guyana. You go in and pay $150,000 US to Mercury to go meet congressmen. I know Cherry Jagan never used to pay any money for going and reach them. They did what is a thing that is poisonous for democracies in now. Because this is what they do. Having gotten the sliver of votes that are persuadables, people who they can do, they send some very racial ads to those persons. I am now learning of it, Sherrod. This thing is nasty. The PPP sent ads to Amerindians and East Indians. Black man can't run aisle money. You hear me? And they talk one set of nonsense to Amerindian people through ads that went direct to them. And we can't see it. However, we now up on the platform in Durban Park, non-racial platform. And if we talk any racial talk whilst on the platform, you're going to get Starbrook News and Kaiser News murdering you. Ramzitan uttered a racial word. But this was secretly done. And that is why Bharat was so laughing. This is what he did. And a lot of people do not understand that. And I have asked proprietors of newspapers now that the lady, Brittany Kaiser, came out with it to whistleblow that Guyana President Donald Ramotar in 2014 paid them $420,000 to do this troll on all these Guyanese. And then they had to go now pay more money for the ads to direct to them. And they did it through telephone calls and all. And it is not only racial ads, it is disinformation and fake news. And they know what that person would eat up, as it were, that voter. Because you profile the voter in such a way that the psychology of the voter is known. So if you tell the voter, you got to vote for the PPP back because they're going to rape your daughter, then police buys in the interior area, they're like, this woman and that. That is what they did. More and more it is coming out. I never knew that Donald Ramotar and them had paid that kind of money. I learned about last year, remember? In the May article with Kaiser News, I had warned that Mercury is not being paid money to lobby anybody. It is to do this vicious manipulation of the minds of people. And today, we are going where it has happened in Brexit and so on. Yeah. It's a very difficult thing to counter.
Fake news and lies.
Fake news, disinformation, and racial ads. Because under the Racial Hostility Act of Guyana, you cannot go and openly cuss Kuliman or black man, cuss Kuliman or Kuliman cuss black man. No, that is an offense. But you do it on the cyber and the cloud and all them fancy things. I almost savvy than me with the thing. And you direct it there. You know what that does? And knowing that we won by only 4,000 in 2015, and this thing is neck and neck, you need only a sliver of votes to make the change. So they did their mischief inside of these boxes and so on. They jack up 15, 14, 15. You multiply that by 1,000 bucks, you get 15,000 more votes. But you also carry these disinformation and fake news and racialized ads to that set of people who like independent, and they come out of it. Try. I can't give Apnu+Afc for running this aisle money. And that is what happened here. And you warn people, but people say, well, what are we going to do? I don't know what you're going to do. But I didn't know about Cambridge Analytica, I tell you honestly. It was publicly that Bharat said he paid $34 million to Mercury. Mm-hmm. And, but Mercury, I understand, got all the information from Cambridge Analytica as to what and what should be the strategies. And people should know about this. Your television station here should print all those things that came.
We did publish some of it. And
and send it to those PPP blogs and chat lines. They must know how it is. So they could carry on with racial ads. And we want to build a nation here doing what is called the good thing, the real righteous thing of having non-racial ads and all of that. And then they said they win. That is terrible. And I remember that in the United Kingdom, that big investigation went on, you know. And Facebook was fined $15 billion for allowing that to happen. But we ain't got no laws here. One of the law that we can go for talk people is talk about campaigning, funding and all that. We have to start putting a law to that effect because that manipulates the minds of people.
Yeah.
And by virtue of their private records, you check out their psychodynamics, demographics, and so on. And then you go and you win an election, you say, yes, we win. And then you
Winning
use
the people.
Yeah, and you're going to tell the people that you win it because they closed down the sugar estate. We closed down the sugar estate because of a rational reason. It was sucking up too much of money.
Still is.
And yes, still is. You got to go and sell some land now. Gazette the sale of land for purposes of paying Gaisuko monies. And then the people saying that you're selling off lands. That is it. You see, that is the tyranny of disinformation. It is crazy. And then people now, no matter how good you are crucified for it, like Jesus.
Minister, I just want to bring us back to, again, a very tense nation. What do we tell them at this juncture?
I want peace, Sharon. We have to ensure that there is absolutely no lawlessness out there. If we are going to protest, we must ensure that we protest peacefully and in accordance with the social distancing now that COVID measures are in place. But we must also ensure that ultimately we respect the constitutional authorities that make final declarations. That is all I ask. We're going to be vexed. One way or the other, half of the country is always vexed when a result come out in this place. And we also have to now go on to talk to each other. I'm talking about the PPP and the Apnu+Afc as to how we can resolve this situation so that everybody in the country can feel comfortable living in it, not being victim of any hatred for the other. It is fundamental, again. A lot of fundamentals are coming out here that needs to be put in proper places. And so we have to now start talking genuine power sharing and shared governance, because I don't see this thing being resolved. And the way that Jagdeo has been carrying on, as if this man been it in a normal, regular mode, knowing that he had all kinds of Cambridge Analytica and Mercury behind him and all of that, that thing, it is not good for Guyana. And whosoever is the winner, they must enjoin the other major party to talk to them. Let's have a talk. Let's stop this nonsense. Guyana could be the richest country in the entire Americas because of that oil money. And it is because of that oil money and the stakes being so high that you have the situation where Jagdeo, I think, started it off since the Chandas no confidence motion. We got to forget them. And he had laughed us in Parliament that he's going to get us. And we obviously, and I am going to be blunt about this, was outmaneuvered by those people that he had underneath doing the darker side of a campaigning that is prohibited publicly. And we got to get more sophisticated too. A democracy with citizenry that is sophisticated will find out. And when, even if they didn't find out, but they come to know, they will know how to resolve it by passing the relevant laws or looking at best practices in other countries and so on. So, first thing, do not engage in any violence and lawlessness. I have asked the police commissioner to ensure the peace and the preservation of peace be maintained all over and all regions. They are in line again. So it is, you will be cooperating with them if you help in that regard, members of the public, whether you are PVP supporters, Apnu+Afc supporters, ANUC supporters, whosoever you are. And we ask of leaders in this community, be not provocatory with your utterances so that you can inflame a situation and cause people to go running all over the place and so on. And I am asking too that our Commissioner of Police and his leadership in that police force make sure that law and order is maintained. And finally, let us abide, as the President has said all along, by the constitutional authorities that are there for making the declarations. Let us abide by them. We can vex, well, who vex, but the trouble is, abide by them. And that is my message to members of the Guyanese community here this evening.
Thank you very much, Minister. It has been our pleasure having you on the Apnu+Afc National Recount Update. Thank you for your time so much. Ladies and gentlemen, there we have it. That is our time for this evening. At this hour, we know that the Court of Appeal is set to hear the substantive matter of Eslyn David versus the Guyana Elections Commission beginning tomorrow, Saturday, at 11 hours at the Court of Appeal. The justices who are going to be listening to those matters include Justice Dawn Gregory Barnes, along with Justice Rishi Prasad and High Court Judge Brassington Reynolds. And we also know at this hour that the opposition parties, the People's Progressive Party, Civic, they have also joined the matter, and also some other parties included in this lot is Change Guyana, the New Movement, Citizens Initiative, and the Liberty and Justice Party. Folks, we're going to be back at 8 with some more updates for you. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. See you at 8, when I'll be joined at that time with my colleague, Christopher Jones. On behalf of myself, Sherry Duncan, Christopher Jones, and the rest of the technical team, we're going to see you guys at 8. Stay safe.